Video 1 from Unit 8, Lesson 4. This is the final method we're going to learn to solve quadratic equations, and this is going to be called completing the square. Okay, so we want our equations to look like this, because remember how to solve this, I can just use square roots, and I can do square root of both sides. And get my two solutions fairly easy here. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. So that's the goal, is to get equations that look like this. So I'm going to be starting with equations that look like this and changing them by completing the square to look like this. Now, I just have a number sign here because we don't always know what that number is going to be. Okay, and this f here is the perfect square that we're wanting. Okay, so for example, this equation, x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0, is the same thing as this equation. Now, we've learned ways we can solve this, x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0, without completing the square. We've learned we can factor, or we can use quadratic formula, but here's just another way we can solve it. Okay, so let's talk about how to change it into that form. Alright, so we're starting with x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0. Well, the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to get rid of this 7. I need to move the 7 to the other side. So instead of having it equal to 0, you need to move the c over. Okay, so move the 7. Let me just rewrite that. So you have x squared plus 6x equals 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a number right here so I get a perfect square trinomial. To do that, I use a special little formula, b over 2 squared. So b over 2, technically a, but our a is always just going to be 1, so it'll be 2 times 1, which is 2. So b over 2 squared. Okay, so x squared plus 6x plus, I'm going to leave a blank here. Now, if I put something on the left side of my equation, I have to put something on the right side to keep this a balanced, equal equation. So it doesn't matter what it is, you just have to make sure you add it to both sides. Okay, so my b is 6. So b over 2 squared, so 6 over 2 squared, that's 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to add 9 and 9. This also should be negative 7 because I subtracted. Okay. So I have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals negative 7 plus 9, those are like terms, so I can combine them and I get 2. Now, what I did is I made a perfect square trinomial, so it will factor to this binomial squared. So if you factored x squared plus 6x plus 9, multiplies to give you 9, adds to give you 6. Well, that's 3 and 3. It's not a coincidence that it's the same, because what I'm looking for is this. So x squared plus, or x plus 3 times x plus 3 is the same thing as x plus 3 quantity squared. So I did that on purpose because remember, once you're in this form, then to solve you're just taking the square root of both sides. Okay, so it ends up factoring to whatever your b over 2 was before you squared it. So x plus 3 squared equals 2. Okay, so that's the process. Let's go through it a couple more times. We're going to start off just by trying to figure out what number we need here. Okay, so for what value of c will complete the square? So I need to use this b over 2 squared. So 4 is my b. So 4 over 2 squared. Okay, 4 over 2 is 2, and then 2 squared is 4. So the answer is just 4. And that's all I'm doing on this problem. I'm just trying to figure out what I would put here to complete the square. Okay, let's look at the next one. All right, b is negative 10. So negative 10 over 2 squared. That's negative 5 squared. Negative 5 squared is positive 25. So you would add 25 to both sides. Okay, so that's picking that number out. That's kind of the special number I need to complete the square. Now we will solve, we'll do the whole process. Okay, again, first thing, we need to move the current c that you have over, minus 12. Negative 12. Okay, so I'm going to write this x squared plus 8x, and I'm going to put a blank there, and I'll put a blank on the right side too. Okay, so let's find our value of c. We need to complete the square. So our b is 8. So 8 over 2 squared, 4 squared, so 16. Okay, so I have 8x squared plus 8x plus 16 on the left, and then on the right, negative 12 plus 16 is 4. Okay, remember that this will factor to a binomial squared, and that is going to be this number here. So x plus 4 squared equals 4. And then we can solve. So solve by square roots. So square root of 4 is positive or negative 2. Subtract 4. Negative 4 plus or minus 2. So negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. Okay. Again, you're not always going to get whole numbers. Let's look at this next one. First thing, let's move the c. Okay, now I need to leave a blank. Okay, let's complete the square. So negative 14 divided by 2 squared, that's negative 7 squared, which is 49. So I need to add 49 to both sides. So on the left, I have x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals negative 25 plus 49, which is 24. Okay, so the left side factors, so x minus 7, so this number, quantity squared, and let's square root. You type square root of 24 in your calculator, and you get a decimal. So you can write it in decimal form. We can round it to 2 decimal places, so plus or minus. I have 4.898, so that's actually going to just be 4.9. And then add 7. So you'll get 7 plus 4.9, which is 11.49. 7 minus 4.9, 2.1. Sorry, 11.9 and 2.1. Sometimes this is left in radical form. So from here, if you don't round, you have x minus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 24. Add 7. So it looks like this. So instead of having 4.9, you just leave it as square root of 24. So you just have to look and see if your answer choices are given to you in radicals or decimals. Okay, couple more. Try 6. Now leave a blank to complete the square. Okay, negative 2 over 2 squared. That's negative 1 squared, which is 1. So you're just adding 1 to both sides. And then this will factor to remember this number. So x minus 1 squared equals negative 5. Okay, solve, so square root both sides. Well, what happens when you try to square root a negative is you get an error. So this one has no solution. And that's because that was negative. You can't have a negative under the square root. If you look at this problem, this one already has the c on the other side. So there's no need to move the 44 to the left just to move it back to the right. We can go ahead and leave our blank. Okay, let's complete the square. So 20 divided by 2 squared, that is 10 squared, which is 100. So add 100 to both sides. (44 plus 100 is 144. All right, this trinomial factors x plus 10 quantity squared. Square root both sides. And we get x plus 10 on the left. That gets rid of the square. Plus or minus 12, so whole number on the right. Subtract 10. Okay, so my two answers. Negative 10 plus 12 is 2. Negative 10 minus 12 is negative 22. Okay. So that's completing the square. That's something new. Just take your time, practice through more of the video again, like pause it and try them on your own if you're having trouble. Feel free to email me too if you have any questions. But now you're ready to do Unit 8, Assignment 4.